Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Christina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Christina Schmidt. So today I've got a fun guest on, somebody that I've known on LinkedIn, known virtually on LinkedIn for a couple of years. And I had the pleasure of listening to her speak at my son's school 3 years ago now, probably maybe. And it's just, some of what she has said has just struck me so much. And it's so relatable to everything that comes up and through the training sessions that I'm doing. So I'm so excited to have her on to share with you what she does. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Westbrook. Sarah is a professional speaker, author, singer, and emotional resilience strategist. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? It's quite a title.
It is. I always make the joke. I've made fun of my podcast title the last few times. It's such a mouthful that I can't even say it half the time.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So, Sarah, tell us about yourself before we get into what you do.
Yes. Okay. Well, a little bit about me. I am a mom of a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old. So that's a lot of fun. He's a very busy into sports, and it's, always keeping us, my husband and I, on our toes. And it's interesting because when I am working with all different ages on emotional resilience, and strategies to navigate emotions and to make character-based choices, even in the heat of a tough emotion, the best learning is me on myself as a parent, is how do I navigate my own emotions so I can show up for him and his big emotions. And that is a good check-in, actually. So I've this part of my career is longer than he is old, right? So I've been doing this over 18 years. And I would say that the best learning has been through him.
That's amazing. I wholeheartedly agree. I often find myself saying that, leadership and parenting, they're really the same thing.
Oh, yes.
The goal is the same. You want productive human beings to come out of it. It's like, productive, well-balanced, well-rounded human beings. So,
and they live with you. I mean, at work, you're bye. It's the end of the day. See you later. And you've got this little human being, and you are their person. You are their support. You are their mentor. And I'm a big believer that you can't teach a child what you're not willing to learn and model. So in my profession, if I'm talking about be aware of your emotion and accept it, but manage it and navigate it in a way that helps you bounce back and move forward, I have to do that. And you cannot help anyone, whether it's in the workplace or your own family or child, calm down if you don't find your chill first. And I think that's the hardest part, is because family, like even if you don't have kids, if you're listening to this podcast, you don't have kids, family in general can be very triggering. Right? They're sometimes the hardest to set and hold a healthy boundary and look at, oh my goodness, what is it about me that I'm getting so upset by that comment? And I think, that's really where, if you're open to it, a lot of learning can happen, and that can translate right into your career or right into even if you don't have a profession, if you are a stay-at-home parent, it translates right into your relationships.
Absolutely. It's all connected because it is all about relationships, essentially.
Essentially, yes.
And relationships with ourselves.
Yes.
So like that understanding of, why am I triggered by that? Why am I getting so upset over this?
Well, the relationship with yourself is huge.
Exactly. Yes. And it's something we constantly have to work on. So awesome. So Sarah, tell us your mouthful title. Tell us a little bit about your journey to get to what you're doing today.
Okay, well, let's go for the Coles Note version so that everyone can listen and then be like, okay, I got it. So when I was 3, let's go way back. No, but seriously, when I was 3, I told my mom, I said, I'm going to be a singer. By the time I was 8, I was taking singing lessons. By the time I was 11, I was a paid performer, traveling, singing, loving it. Also at the age of 11, my teacher at the time thought I'd be really good at public speaking. So in school, you do those public speaking. And then so I wrote a speech and I did it for my class, but then I moved on and did it for my school, and then moved on and I did it for the Optimist, and it just overflowed into, I do kind of like speaking in front of people, even though I was totally nervous. It was the feel the fear and do it anyway moment. At the same time, though, my life as I knew it at home was completely shifting and in my world falling apart. My parents were arguing more, eventually got separated, got back together, got separated, eventually got divorced, but it was this roller coaster ride. And I didn't have control over the circumstance. And there was a big emotional impact. And when my dad left, there was an impact even to my self-esteem. So my mom, being the wise woman she is, she put me into every single character development support group, and she did the same for herself. But I'm the youngest, so I was the only one at home. So I came along for the ride, and I started doing all sorts of character work at a young age. And I'll tell you right now, Christina, I didn't always want to go. I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't need that. I just need more friends. So my mom would be like, okay, you don't have a choice. You can choose what pants you wear, but you can't choose whether you go or not. There's your choice, that your outfit. jeans or khakis. But I ended up going and learning and putting lots of tools in my toolbox. Even if I didn't use them all right away, they were there.
Yeah.
And I was still singing. I was still doing public speaking. And it wasn't until I was 19 years old and I was singing at a mall with my producer at the time, because I did the whole recording artist. And a principal came up to me and was like, can you sing at my school and let the students ask you how you got to do things like record an album and sing the anthem for the Blue Jays, etc.? And I was like, okay. And I was so nervous. Like, my greatest fear growing up was being judged. What if people don't like me? And so now I'm standing in front of a crowd of hundreds of preteens and 13-year-olds. And so and partway through the presentation, they weren't asking me about my musical career that I thought, like they're going to ask me. They were saying, like, what's your home life like? Have you ever been made fun of? How'd you get through challenges? And I was like, okay. So I started to pull out tools in my toolbox. And then if you fast forward, that's when not right away, but a little bit after that, those three worlds of speaking, character education, and singing all collided. So I developed a presentation in a company called You Power. You have the power to choose action, reaction, beliefs, regardless of circumstance. And then I worked with youth. Then I worked with educators, parents. Now I work also with corporate athletes, all around, not just circumstance, but the emotions they trigger.
That's so awesome. So amazing that your mom knew that she needed to put you in something like that too. And like, she stuck to it, because that's so, to me, that's so beautiful, because it's like that toolbox has helped you then in your situation, and then has given you like this whole career and this whole thing. And I think it's blessing so many people. So
yes. And like I said, I fought her on it. So for any parents out there or guardians, when you know something is great for your child, or like, I don't want to go, be like, okay,
yeah,
you're going.
Yes.
Because, for me, if she gave me a choice, I wouldn't have gone. Mm-hmm. But since her choice was I'm going to choose, because you can't see the forest. You're just looking at the tree. You're looking at that you don't want to do this. You rather hang out with your friends. But I know that I need to expand your village to be not just your friends. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to do just about anything. And We've got to expand it. And so that's been also my commitment to my son.
And that's so beautiful. I love it. So when you and I spoke initially on the phone, we talked about leadership and how like bringing in emotions into the workplace are important. So, and one thing in particular jumped out for me, because I was having a leadership program, and I had a lot of people at that time saying, hey, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get close to people. I don't want to deal with their emotions. So what is it? Well, number one, what is it about emotions? And then number two, why do we need to bring them into the workplace?
Number one, with emotions, they're uncomfortable. We love comfort and we love convenience. I mean, look at all the things that we buy, we purchase that are comfortable, comfortable mattresses, pillows, comfortable running shoes. We want convenience. We want to order things in advance at Starbucks and then show up and it's conveniently there. So that, it's just, we love comfort and convenience. Emotions aren't that. They're literally physically uncomfortable sometimes. Like sometimes when I'm anxious, my heart races, my throat closes in, my hands get shaky. It is physically uncomfortable. And sometimes it's not convenient. And someone around you has an emotion and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. So now you're mixing discomfort with inconvenience. No, thank you. And so I think a lot of us, since we want instant pleasure and we don't want that discomfort and pain, we just want to avoid the emotion. But more and more of us are realizing, more and more research is being done on the fact that emotions are information. They can even be used to motivate you to get something done. Imagine if you never felt the emotion of anger. You never felt like something was unjust. Well, would you ever make a shift? Anxious, that same anxious emotion that I just said that feels really physically uncomfortable for me has also been the same emotion that has saved my life. The other day I was parallel parking my car. I got out of the car, grabbed my purse. I'd looked both ways. And as I grabbed my purse, I quickly looked, one way and I shut the door and I was about to step out, but on my peripheral vision, I could see a truck coming. So what did I do? I stepped back and my body was flooded with that anxious emotion where you like almost get a pit in your stomach and you can feel like an emotional chemical explosion in your whole body that makes you tingle. If I didn't have that, I would have kept walking. So it's how are we gauging emotions? How are we using them and moving with them and through them? Not how are we trying to avoid them or get rid of them? How are we trying to lean into the discomfort? I think that's really the skill so that you can harness the emotion and say, okay, what could this be telling me? It's almost like you're like a scientist in your own self. You're an observer. What could this be telling me? And even when you're talking with other people, that takes that's the skill of an amazing leader. To be unattached to the emotion, but be aware of it, that you don't have to fix and change it. Like how many times you've been feeling an emotion, you don't need someone to fix and change it, but you'd like if somebody honored it or recognized it or validated it or gave it space. And that does not mean that you get to be rude or disrespectful and say like, oh, it's emotion. No, that's not okay. It's not about that. And we can get into that a bit later, but it's about the awareness and the navigation of it.
Absolutely. So that giving space. So a lot of us, we've gotten good at, I feel something, shut it down, especially when we get to the workplace. So what would that look like to give first of all, to give your own emotion space and then to do that for somebody else? Like what would that look like?
It's okay to feel. Now, I've been doing presentations for over 18 years with all ages. Even adults, I start the conversation with, it's okay to feel. But who here has ever caught themselves doing this? Don't be anxious. Don't be anxious, Sarah. You're just on a podcast and people might be listening to you and they don't even like you. They don't like what you're saying, but don't be embarrassed about that and don't be upset. And if somebody leaves a bad comment, don't be angry. Stop it. Who here has ever caught yourself, even if you're listening right now, telling yourself what not to feel? Well, in all the presentations I do, people raise their hand. Yeah, I've totally told myself what not to feel. Okay, so I say, well, is that helpful? Do you find the emotion instantly goes away? Don't be anxious. Oh, now I'm not anxious anymore. No, they say it heightens. It gets worse. You only intensify the emotion because your brain loves to focus on something. And the most important word in don't be anxious, it's a strong word. The focus is anxious. So your brain's like anxious, 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 and it will find more evidence to prove why you should be anxious. And if that's not helpful, then let me ask you this. What if someone around you can tell you're feeling an emotion and they look at you and say, you're overreacting. Don't feel that way. Calm down. Relax. That's enough.
Calm down, the best one.
Everyone's like, what? No, that's not helpful. If I'm upset and I'm sad and you tell me to stop being sad, I'm like, good news. I'm not sad anymore because now I'm mad because you didn't give me space to feel sad. I say space to feel is space to heal, but look how often we don't allow space. Well, why don't we allow space for emotions even within ourselves is because, again, it's uncomfortable. And many of us weren't raised openly talking about emotions. It was like, go to your room and come out when you're happy. That's how I deal with you best. So we have to unlearn and relearn and say, what if I told my own self it's okay to feel? Because I'm going to ask you one more question. And for all the listeners, just really think about this. You're feeling nervous, anxious, scared, or overwhelmed. Someone in your life, colleague, spouse, partner, friend, looks at you and says, I can tell you're feeling a lot. It's okay. Now, how do you feel? Most people say, seen, hurt. comfortable. All I said was it's okay to feel. I did not try to fix or change your emotional state. So I think we go into, and I know even myself, I'll go into fix it mode because my brain wants to problem solve and fix it.
Yes.
But what if we practice connection before redirection? No one's actually open to redirection before connection. And one of the greatest ways we connect as human beings is we say, it's okay to feel how you're feeling. Now, all of a sudden, people feel seen and heard. And you're not saying anything about the emotion. Your brain could be like, oh my gosh, you're totally overreacting. I can't even believe. Your brain could be saying a whole conversation, but your words are, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Now, all of a sudden, you have an opening. That builds a relationship. And then whatever you're about to say next is going to be way more impactful and received.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's an honoring.
It is. It is. And it sounds so easy. And it is easy in theory, right?
In theory.
But what gets in the way, people being able to do that, of being able to hold the space, of being able to just say, I can see you're feeling a lot right now. Like instead of saying, it's okay, it's okay. So what's getting in the way there?
It could be habits. It could be ego, pride. I mean, if you have the mindset too of they're weak and they're dramatic, that's how you're going to see that person. And that also is going to irritate you. Because the minute you decide what that's seen as weakness, your brain, again, it loves to find evidence for why you're right. So you're going to be like, oh, there they go again. Look at them. As opposed to perception shifting, right? How you perceive someone, how you perceive the emotion, even your own emotion. You know how many people tell me they shame themselves for feeling what they're feeling? Maybe they grew up with people who are like, you're over dramatic, you're reacting, as opposed to, oh, you're a human being, you're not a robot. That's good news. When you have an emotional response, it means your body is working properly. However, you have to be able to navigate that emotion because you don't want to become reactive and use your emotions as an excuse to be unkind, disrespectful, give up. Say, oh, I'm so frustrated, forget about it. What if you could take frustration and use it as drive? Because we don't want to use emotions as an excuse to, and this is what I say. Emotions are a reason for a behavior. So if you're noticing choices in behavior, but they're not an excuse for it.
Yes.
But if you can be like, oh yeah, no, yeah, I can see you're really frustrated. Okay. Then they've got to learn frustration tolerance, stress tolerance, so that ultimately that will shift their choices. And that's really what I'm into is strategy based. How do we help people think and act beyond emotions? Honoring the emotion, it's okay to feel it, but let's make choices that show who you believe you are as a person, not just how you feel in the moment. So you can feel angry and be respectful in your email at the same time. You just need tools.
Yes. That's awesome. Because the thing is we don't get the tools anymore. We talk about this a lot in the leadership courses that we do. And it is like we react. We spent our whole lives because we've created these patterns we've learned these programs basically in our childhood that teach us, I feel angry, I go, I yell, or I feel angry, I start shaming myself, or whatever that program that we learned was. And it's so hard to come out of that autopilot feel unless you purposely do it. So it does take the work to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. It's like if I want to go to the gym and have strong biceps, I can't just think about it and listen to a podcast on it. I actually have to do the work. I have to do it consistently. And I think you have to do it proactively. You can't just wait till you're in a stressful situation to start like implementing tools. You have to do it in advance. Give your brain a blueprint. When your brain is in a stressful situation, it will default to whatever it's comfortable to. That's why many people say, I'm not going to be my parents when I have kids. And then all of a sudden, they're doing something in the heat of the moment. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's what my mom would do. That was what my dad would do. I told myself I wouldn't do that. Well, because you haven't unlearned and rewired. So I do believe that doing that work is really important. And it takes someone who is willing to say, okay, looking at emotions isn't weak. It's actually strength, because you can only push down emotions for so long. We all have an emotional bandwidth and we all know someone who's like, I don't deal with my emotions. It's a gift. I don't deal with them. And you're like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And then one day they're just not fine. And it's like everyone has a different bandwidth, but we all have them. And the correlation, and this is not just me saying this is science, between emotional stress and your immune system is massive. So you're more open to disease, viruses, like emotions are energy. And so the more and more research, and especially Yale and Harvard are doing a lot of research on emotions and the impact they have. And I think that back in the day, we didn't do that research. So it was kind of like, be stoic. That's how you do it. Just keep pushing. And we're realizing, but if you want to be proactive, not just with your mental health, but your physical health, with your overall health and well-being, with your relationships, with your communication, with your choices, well, then you probably should know what to do with your emotions. Because if you don't know what to do with jealousy and anger, that
Someday.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So we talked about that impact. What other impact could it have if we don't deal with emotions well, like in a workplace or a team environment? Like what would that do to that team?
Resentment? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. That'd be me. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I know all too well about, oh yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Now I say, I have a mantra I say to myself when holding a healthy boundary. Like when when this could even be with family, or it could be something where in the workplace where you're like, no, respectfully, I have to uphold this boundary of whatever it could be, is people will be disappointed because maybe you're someone who normally absorbs it. You absorb it. So if you say no, they're going to be like, what do you mean no? But they're allowed to be disappointed, and you don't have to take that on as guilt. So I remind myself, even as a parent, their disappointment, not my guilt. I can hold the healthy boundary. They're allowed to be disappointed, and I don't have to absorb that as guilt. And so I think that what happens also in the workplace is we end up absorbing a lot of people's emotions and not even realizing it, and by the end of the day, you're like, it's like a sponge that's taking up too much water instead of wringing it out and looking at, okay, what do I have control over? I don't have control over everyone in the office. I don't have control over my whole team. I don't have control over all my family. I don't have control over the world. I literally have control over myself. Like that's all I have control over. I only have control really over me and how I react and respond to circumstances, how I respond to emotions, how I connect with myself, what I choose to believe about myself, my body, my dreams. And that's really powerful when you can detach from, I have to control everything, and I have to, even much as we want control, when you realize that's not in my control and I'm exhausting myself. And I'm becoming resentful, and I'm exhausting myself to the point that I'm not as effective and efficient and productive.
Yeah. Yes. And then, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that energy that we waste, like there's so much that we have to pay attention to. So all that energy that we waste in dealing with other people's emotions, or all of that, not squeezing out the sponge. It's just wasted, and we're not putting it towards the things that are important in our lives or in our work or whatever it may be. So
yes. And I did it for many years, and I still have moments, especially with family, right? Mm-hmm. Where you'll take, and I have to consciously do that work within myself. For me, journaling helps, music helps, mindful meditation helps, deep breathing's a big one for me, like really staying present within myself. I know when I get really chaotic, I realize I'm more outside. I'm thinking about everything else instead of just doing a tap in with my own self, reminding myself, even on the hard days, the times where I've made mistakes, the misplay days, that I am enough, and grounding yourself in your own worth. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Confidence can dip, but worth never. Your worth does not depend on everybody liking you. Your worth does not depend on your accolades. Mm-hmm. Your worth does not depend on the outcome. It depends on you really connecting with yourself. And I think one of the greatest ways you do that is you connect to all those awkward emotions, that uncomfortable ones, the painful ones, the joyous ones, and you realize this is all part of the journey. It's supposed to be this.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's so good to do that, but it's hard, and it takes work, and it takes time, and
support sometimes.
Yeah. It's not going to happen in one day, and you're not going to master all your emotions in one sitting or even a week. It is.
And it's an ongoing ever flow journey, but at least if you can be open to it and on with it. I know even for my Instagram accounts where I actually post the most about strategies around emotions. If anyone wants to go to that, it's IAM and Sarah, Sarah Westbrook. And that one, I post bits and pieces because you're right. Some days are just hard. And I know that for myself. I do this work, but some days I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is hard. This is messy. This is uncomfortable. But at least if we can support one another. I want to say one thing before I know we have to wrap up because I can see the time and I could talk about this all day, but I feel like this is really important because I just heard this about 2 weeks ago, and it was a psychologist that said most adults are walking around at an 8-year-old emotional intelligence. So that's why we have adults, and you might have adults in your work or in your life that when they give the silent treatment, they're passive aggressive when emotions are too much. actual have tantrums, go into a corner, like, oh, no, that's no, you don't get it. Okay, yeah, whatever, fine. Like that.
Yep.
Yeah. We all know something like that where it's like not communicating. What that's showing is what a child would do when they can't handle their emotions. So when we see adults do it, you realize there is an emotional gap that they don't actually have the tools. So then it's our job independently to say, okay, do I want to learn the tools to model it to my kids? And again, if you don't have kids, your coworkers, your friends, your family members, like how you show up is going to impact other people around you. So that's why I love this work, is because I do believe that it's a ripple effect.
It totally is. What you were saying there just reminds me, I'm totally extending it now. I listen to Dr. Becky Kennedy a lot. I don't know if you've
Yes. Oh, yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So she always says that kids are born with all the emotions and none of the tools to work with them. And it's the thing is we adults will grow up without being able to deal with it because if they're not given the skills as children. So as leaders who are working through this, so I speak to a lot of leaders on this and business owners, we're going to be working with a lot of adult-sized children.
8-year-olds.
A lot of 8-year-olds running around in your workplace today. So learning how to deal first with your own emotions and then being able to help them and coach them and facilitate them through their emotions is so key to getting everybody to work together, to getting those results that you want. So it's so hugely important. Yes. So,
well, and that's the strategies that I'm passionate about. So if I work with a corporation, if I work with a team, that's what I'm doing. I'm giving them simple, effective strategies to just go from point A to point B. Because again, it's a muscle, right? And when I go to the gym, I don't want to learn all the backstory. I just want you to say, pick up that weight, Sarah, and do the reps. So that's what I do, but with emotional resilience.
Awesome. That is amazing. So if people want to get in touch with you or work with you or bring you in to do speaking, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can email me. So it's Sarah, no H, at Sarah Westbrook. noe.com. Also Instagram, I am Sarah Westbrook, and LinkedIn, another one. That's great.
Awesome.
It's just Sarah Westbrook.
I'll have that all linked in the show notes and the YouTube description and all that as well. So it's there for people to find. So Sarah, thank you so much for coming today and sharing all of that. It's so great to hear, like, all of the work that you can do, all of the success that you can have when we start focusing on emotions, when we start focusing on our well-being as leaders, as parents, as humans, and how that can just impact the world so much more. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, I think the byproduct of working with emotions is resilience.
Totally. Absolutely. And to the listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like it, share with a friend, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, and importantly, leave a review. If you're on Apple or Spotify, it helps the algorithm and helps us to share it with more people. Thank you so much. And we will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit ChristinaSchmidt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.